getting back to it, Mount of Olives, where Yahshua ascended to heaven and where he'll return. World War III, the end of it, Battle of Armageddon at Megiddo. Look at that pottery again, unbelievable. What's this? Yeah, it's more something maybe. Anyway, the reason all those graves are there, a big misconception people have, they think that when you die you either go to heaven or hell. That's not biblical. The Bible describes death asleep, which is the reason why headstones used to say, maybe modern ones still do, RIP, rest in peace. You could actually add after that, until the resurrection. The Bible's quite clear that when Yahshua returns, all the dead will be raised to life. It says the dead in Christ will rise first. People that are dead. They're not in heaven, they're not in hell, they're dead, they're asleep. They're waiting for the return of Yahshua to judge the living and the dead at the great white throne judgment. The book of life will be opened and will be read from. Now, without going into too much more detail on that, I'm currently writing a book at the moment anyway. It's part of the reason I'm here. And there are a lot of misconceptions so-called Christians have which aren't biblical. Probably most of them. And it's going to upset a lot of people. It's not my intention. I just have an obsession for the truth. Now, to make it quite clear, people who are dead, relatives of yours, they're not in heaven or they're not in hell, and they're most certainly not in this fictitious place called purgatory. They're actually asleep, waiting resurrection. And Mary, like Catholics, you're really not going to like this, but your belief is not, quite a few aren't, but particularly this. Mary, mother of Yahshua, she's dead. She's asleep, awaiting the resurrection like the rest of them. That makes absolutely no sense that when you die, you go to heaven or hell at death, or maybe 3 days later, as again with the Catholics. Makes no sense for that to happen when Yahshua hasn't even returned yet to judge the living at the time and the dead. Why the hell, pardon the pun, would you go to heaven or hell now, or 2,000, 5,000 years ago, whatever the case is, when the judgment hasn't been made yet? And then when you're raised from the dead to face judgment, what, they're going to pull you out of heaven and go, oh mate, we made a mistake, sorry, you're going to hell. And another thing with that too, hell's not an eternal fire. I know many of you will disagree. I've heard all the arguments. I've looked into them, and yeah, there are some verses which, you know, could be a bit ambiguous, but weigh it up with the rest. You know, the Bible is quite clear. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. Or in other words, not live forever in torment, being chased by some bloke with a goatee and a pitchfork, chasing you around a huge fire pit for eternity. It's absolute nonsense. The Bible does not teach that. Heard the arguments? They're not true. Again, with the died and gone to heaven nonsense, look at it this way. Let's just say that someone, you know, great-grandmother, grandmother, has died supposedly up in heaven. And she's looking down, as you think, over you and her offspring and so on. And she's seeing people getting raped, members of her family getting raped, murdered, killed, etc. You name it. That's not real, doesn't really fit the idea of heaven now, does it? So the whole thing's nonsense. When you die, you're dead until the resurrection. And the resurrection will happen when Yahshua returns, the end of World War III, the Battle of Armageddon at Megiddo. He'll return there. And that's why those graves are at the Mount of Olives, because they know the truth. And I think it's really interesting that over on that hill is the UN headquarters.